Dr. Dave Hayes, and this is an intro or course overview for IR6690, the capstone, and send this out to students before the course and assign it in the first week. So it meant to give you an idea what the course is going to be about so you can hit the ground running on the first day. Overarching objective of this course is that you have to write a 20-page, that's 5,000 word research paper. And you need to get a B or better, right? This is a critical component of the degree, and you can have grades below a B. You can have 2 grades below a B and stay in our program. But for this course, for graduation, you must get a B or better in this course. So the pressure's on, and I'll be very honest with you. Unlike most other courses, I have a failure rate in this course, and it's about 20% at this point of people who either withdraw or I don't pass. And on the plus side, I've never been overridden. And in fact, I have less and less. We send the paper out at the end to a second grader, right? I will grade it, decide whether it's a B or better, and then that's one hurdle, and then it gets sent out to another faculty member. And if they fail the paper, it goes to a third one. And if they both agree, they override me, and I have to give you a C, right? So the thing is that actually the last time I did this, I didn't even have any split decisions, right? So, but it is a thing, right? We do get people who don't pass, but 80% do pass. So it's important to work at. It is doable, but it is hard. It is harder than your average course. Okay, let's look at the course schedule. I'm going to get rid of my face there. All right, week 1, right? There's 6 weeks. The final paper is due in the 6th week, and there is 0 flexibility on that. I mean, I can take it, I could take it Monday morning, not Sunday, right? But I am in danger of even saying that, right? Because it's a departmental mandated deadline. And then there's this whole question of, am I being fair in one class versus not? So, I mean, really 0 flexibility. Got to be done in week 6, okay? And throughout the course, I have the due date listed, like on the front page. Every time you come in, I've listed, it's right there on the front of the course. Okay, so first week, you choose the topic and start a lit review. And this doesn't have to wait to the first week. You should be already thinking about your topic, and you should be doing the lit review. You should be going to JSTOR or EBSCOhost, our online database, and you should be looking at scholarly journal articles on your topic. And the key thing is you need to be looking at that boring academic stuff, and that's going to provide your basis, right, for it. You're going to, in the second week, write the lit review, right? And so in the first week, I have a DX that you can post your topic. In the second week, I have an assignment, right? Write the lit review. And so you have that due. In the third week, we move on to writing a research assignment. So in the first 3 weeks, there's always something that is quote unquote due. However, keep in mind, there is only one assignment in this course. That's the final paper, right? So there is no points award. There are no points awarded for these things. They are there to break up the work and to allow us to have a back and forth conversation, and for me to mentor you through the process. However, none of these things are either due dates, or you're not late. It happens when it happens. There's no late assignment. There's no early assignment. But there's guidance, right? On each week we have this. So keep that in mind. So first 3 weeks we do that. Topic, lit review, research design. Week 4, you conduct research, right? So there's nothing that I ask you to give me at that point. Then in week 5, you submit a draft to me, right? At the end of week 5, or somewhere abouts there, you submit a draft to me, and I look at it, and I give you feedback. And this is the last chance to give you feedback on what you're doing before you turn in the final paper. So you really want to get that week 5 draft to me. And I give feedback very quickly. And in fact, if you're, I don't mind it when some people are a day late, or maybe they're a little bit early, because it spreads it out. And I try to get feedback to you in 24 hours. And if everyone bunches up together, well, it's a little more difficult. But I really do try to get, but what's working against me is I got 20 people. These classes are no longer 12 people a class; they're 20 people, so it's more difficult. But it will get to you more quickly than usual, right? And that's a key thing. And then you submit the final paper. As I say, when you submit the final paper, I grade it, decide whether you've cleared the hurdle, whether I think it's a B or better. If not, I give you the sad news, and generally, by the way, between week 5 and 6, there is, usually it's about the end of week 5 that we have the date to withdraw, right? You have a deadline to withdraw at Troy, and at that point, if you withdraw, you don't fail, right? It's a passing grade. It's a W, but it doesn't have an academic penalty. After that date, it's a penalty. Now, the point is, after the week 5 draft, you will have an opportunity to ripcord out of the course. You still have to pay for it. There's no the financial thing, that's long. That deadline is in the first couple of weeks, right? After the first week, you owe half the course. After the second week, you owe full tuition. However, in terms of academic penalties, you do have an exit option around week 5, and that's a date on Troy's calendar, and that will be communicated specifically during the course. So I will I give very honest feedback in week 5, and sometimes people take advantage of that. Other times people bull forward, so a lot of folks, though, that fail, that 20%, most of them opt out so they don't get a failing grade. Keep that in mind. Then it goes out and you wait, right? So I say, all right, I've sent it to a grader. I can't make any promises, but I've never been overridden, right? So if you clear that hurdle, you're probably fine. You will not get a grade on the assignment until the end of the term, or until I hear that everyone is, I get the results back from the graders, and I don't, when it comes, it's about passing or failing, but then I'll give the grade later after I know, that I just wait until I get the feedback from all the graders, and that's when I give the final grade. So that's how the course is going to work. Textbook, there's no textbook required. You may want to dig out your old research methods in IR textbooks, and you definitely are going to go to JSTOR or other databases in the Troy Library. That is where you're going to do most of your research in the scholarly journal articles. Feedback and mentoring. After each of the assignments, right? The point of the assignments, I said, is they're not graded. They don't count for any. There's one thing counts for 100% of the grade, and that's the week 6 final draft, right? You could theoretically just work on it and turn in, and people have done that, right? People have, worked on their own, not really talked to me, and then bam, I get a paper around week 5 or 6, and they're like, all right, I'm done. those people tend to end up in the 20% that fail, right? Because there's probably something wrong with it. However, not all of them. I'm going to tell you a lot of things throughout this whole process that are rules, that are tendencies. Every paper violates at least one of the rules. Okay, I mean, it's one of these things, and so we have to be aware of that, right? That each paper is its own idiosyncratic process and happening, and so that's why the feedback is so important, because I have to address your paper and tell you things about it. And so throughout, basically you tell me what your topic is and I give you feedback. And then, through the audio feedback, we back and forth a bit. Now, you may need to talk with me, right? But, well, the first thing is listen to the frickin' audio feedback, okay? I have had people who get a large way into the course before realizing that they have audio feedback from me. And I'm like, really? Now, hopefully, a lot of you have had me in 5551, and you're used to this. This is the opposite of when I teach the intro course. You guys have been around. You should know this stuff. You should have found where the audio is and all. Listening to the feedback, very important. You may need to talk with me, because very often, especially if you're having trouble, and especially at the beginning, the ability to back and forth is very important, right? So call me, right? And this is a big thing. Not everyone needs to call me on every assignment. However, it usually, talking to me, helps, right? I'm actually pretty good at this, okay? And so I really am here. I like to talk to you. And so a lot of times, I'll be walking it's no big deal, right? I'll be walking the dog or working in my yard, painting the house, whatever. And I talk to you, right? I will give you my cell phone number, and it's, we can set up a time at your convenience, right? I like to ask people to make an appointment so I can be ready to talk to you, right? As we get later in the process. In the beginning, you're just going to tell me about your topic, and so you can just call me. As we get into it and you have a product, you have pages, then I need to have a heads up that, all right, I'm going to talk to you at this time so I can be ready with the computer, with it up, and sitting there, not walking the dog. At the beginning, I can talk to you while walking the dog. And a lot of times we can back and forth, but other times I need product in front of me, especially when we get to the end. So, key thing, by the way, when making an appointment with me, for the love of God, suggest a time, right? Do not be, well, when is it convenient for you? And it's like, look, it's my freaking job to do this, okay? I literally get paid to do this. So and guess what? You're paying for me to do this. So my attitude is, you tell me when you think a convenient time is, so that I ideally can just say yes and we're ready to go. If that is not going to work, I will come back to you with, that doesn't work and we need a different thing. But, really, please suggest a time from 7 a.m. to, I like 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern time. And notice I'm not telling you a day of the week. Okay, it can be the weekend, it can be the day. 7 a.m. to onward is fine with me. And in fact, we could probably, if you're in some place weird, I can do, I'm recording this thing. It's about 5 in the morning, right? So it's the 7 a.m. is just to not disturb my wife, right? So keep that in mind, that I'm generally available. Suggest a time, pick it. That's time that's convenient for you, and we can talk. But the whole mentoring process is really important, and getting the feedback, responding to it. Papers that do well are papers that when I tell you to fix something, you fix it, right? And I'm not going to tell you how to fix it, but getting it, understanding what I'm getting at, and fixing things as we go along are very important. I will be telling you things, a lot of times I'm telling you because they need to be done. there are times or other things that I'm telling you, like, hey, you need to fix this, and because graders will alert on it, right? And so there are some things that are, you know, I might be like, I might have been more flexible on in other courses here. No, no, no. So when I tell you you need to fix something like fixing citations, or you need to express things more in terms of dependent variables, or, if I tell you something, then you really need to think about it and make changes and incorporate it. When that's another something I see that's a big cut between people making it or not making it. Okay, some general comments here. Selecting the topic, framing the question is half the battle, takes half the time, right? So we have a lot of preliminary stuff at the beginning, right? We have 3 weeks to get to the research design. And herein lies the key to the whole thing. Are you picking a topic? And have you framed that topic in a way that it's answerable, right? And so picking the topic is very key. And we'll talk about that in first week things. But basically, this is an empirical paper, right? You need to be looking at facts, information at a case. You are limited in what will work. It is hard to be predictive, right? It is easier to say, look, the easiest thing you could do is to get into the idiom or the grammar of research. That is to say, I am interested in this dependent variable, and I wish to explain that there's this one thing about international relations I want to explain, or about a particular, maybe a case in international relations. Here's the dependent variable. Here are, looking at the literature, at the various theories, right? Because theories are conjecture about causality, right? So what are the explanations for this dependent variable? Well, the theory, the existing literature, naming names, citing people, says that these are important explanatory variables, independent variables. So I want to see whether or not this independent variable, which independent variables appear to have the effect. Now, whether you do that with a case study or a quantitative analysis or a comparative analysis, or, whatever you do, as long as you are looking at the relationship between variables, and you have one that you're trying to explain, and you're looking at other variables that you think explain it, that's the idiom. And if you're in that ballpark, you're good. If you're trying to talk about what the U.S. should do in the future, well, what's the basis for that, right? You can do that. You can say, well, let's look at this other thing in the past, right, to see whether it informs this, right? But you have to be looking at things. Generally, you have to be looking backwards, because you have to look at information, facts, data, and all of that stuff is in the past, right? It's already happened. So there are limits to what you can look at, and you got to keep that in mind. So if you pick now the key thing though is in how do you do this? What do you look at? It takes research to properly ask the question. So you'll have a topic. I don't know. You'll say, is this a good topic? I don't know. What's the research on it? What's the current research on it? So the lit review is very important, right? Once you have a general, I want to look at this, right? I want to write my paper on this. Then you have to go in and look at the existing research on that topic. You have to do the lit review. And the lit review ends in a question, right? Because the lit review will tell you what people have done on the topic, what questions they've asked, what they haven't asked, and hopefully you see the opportunity to do something that will add to it. So the lit review will hopefully help you develop, narrow, focus your question, focus what you're going to actually look at, and it puts your research in context. It's a very important part of the research process. You have to have a good lit review. This is where we start losing people, right? If you don't have a good lit review, it's not just that you haven't got the form, it's you don't get it, right? You haven't framed the topic in terms, social science terms, and you haven't identified or established what the context is in terms of the existing research and how this topic fits, right? And it's essential that you do this, right? So that's the second week, right? So that we have 2 weeks to get through that. Now, a key thing, the question you ask determines the shape of the research, right? I don't know what you should do, right? And I find if you come in saying, well, I want to do a quantitative analysis, it's like, well, all right, that's great. And and that's fine to have a desire, right? Some of you are going to be, oh, I want to do a case study because I don't want to do that quantitative. All right. There are constraints, right? There are always constraints on decision making, right? However, what you do largely, exactly how you approach doing the research depends on your topic. This is a idiosyncratic, a dynamic process. It's also another term for it. It's path dependent. That is to say, at each step along the way, the next step depends on the previous ones that came before it. And it's dynamic in that you take a step forward and you may learn something. Certainly in the lit review process, you will change. You'll start out with a topic area and some idea. You'll look at stuff and what you find will change the direction a little bit, right? So that's important. Key thing though is good research and analysis requires structure and focus. This is where the research design comes in. You have to have a good framework for analysis. You have to have a plan for how you do it, right? And it generally is written out in a methodology section, right? The research design, what is a research design? If you don't know this already, it's basically the beginning of the paper, right? It's your intro, your lit review, and then a methodology section, or you could have a section that says research design, right? And you need to have a good structured approach to what you're doing. So you have to be able, this is where, being in the idiom or the grammar of social science research is helpful, right? That you can say, hey, I'm looking, I'm interested in this dependent variable, and here are the independent, I'm looking at, so this is the thing I want to explain. The research tells us that these independent variables tend to be important. So I am going to in some way examine the relationship between these independent variables, or maybe an independent variable and the dependent variable in this case or these cases or this data set, right? And here's how I'm going to do it, right? That's what what basically you have to lay out. And it should be, if you start off start off thinking in those terms, it will generally flow. Okay. Key thing, without a good theoretical framework, data will overwhelm you. This is why we're so big on this. You need to have a theoretical framework. It is so important that you understand theory at this point does not mean realism, liberalism, constructivism. A theory is basically an explanation, right? Theories try to explain dependent variables in terms of the causality, right? In terms of the effect of other variables, right? So as the textbook I now use in the intro course, which most of you didn't have, because I changed it recently, but they talk, their definition of a theory is a conjecture about causality. Right? I kind of like that because the point is anything, when you look at your topic, anytime anyone tells you, hey, the coup against Maduro in Venezuela failed because blah, 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 blah. Hey, that's causality. Because means causality, right? And so any explanation of, what is behind an outcome is basically a theory. And so theories present to you in the literature not as theories always. Sometimes they do. And we like those. We love those because those tend to be about more general phenomena than like, okay, we like theories about why coups in general fail or succeed. But as you're doing your research, keep in mind, there will be things that are theoretical, or basically any conjecture about causality, right? So you have things that are not grandiose theories. They are maybe very focused, either on particular generalized phenomena or particular cases. And the idea of the research, ideally, is you say, I'm interested in explaining this thing. The literature tells, looking at what people have got, there is conjecture that these independent variables have an effect. All right, let's in some way go ahead and test, do something to see whether or not that is the case, right? Let's see if the independent variable relates to the dependent variable in the way the theory suggests it does. And we can do that with a process tracing methodology in a case study, or we can do that by looking at multiple cases, whatever, but as long as you're starting out in that, I'm trying to explain this, the literature, right, putting it in the context of literature is really important, right? Says, here are the things, let's look at them, right? That's your conceptual framework for analysis. And this is so important. And if you go that route, if you have those things, you'll be fine, right? This is the thing. So this is what's so important. And I've tried to, as we go through the course, I'm going to emphasize these things. But, if you get started in the right direction, that's going to be a bonus. All right, bottom line, I wanted to make this short. It's hard not to talk at some length on this. Stay frosty, focused and engaged. Okay, don't despair of the end. Focus on the next step. Chip away at it, and communicate with me. And especially at the beginning, do the research. Look at scholarly articles. Look at how they've written, what people have done on this topic, and that is engagement at the early process. Is okay, you've got a general topic area. Go and read, right? And I can't help you very much with what to pick. Any topic can be developed, right? I mean, there's some things that are maybe out of bounds that aren't IR that I'll be able to say, well, that's not really an IR topic. But most things can be developed in a direction, and so you've got to do that, and you do that through looking at the literature, doing the lit review. And so that is what's so important at the beginning for you to start doing. So when I say stay engaged and stay focused, a lot of times it's good to focus on the 25 meter. In the Army, we talk about shooting at 25 meter targets instead of 100 meter targets. And the thing is, the closer in the first step, there's an advantage to being focused on the next step rather than letting, rather than getting wrapped up in what the grandiose thing is. If you tell me, oh, here's exactly what I'm going to do, I'm going to be like, if you say, all right, I'm interested in this, and I'm looking at in this general idea, and I'm looking at research to try to narrow the topic, okay, that sounds good to me. So keep that in mind, and just communicate with me, and listen to my feedback, and hopefully you'll be in the 80%.